The colony was quiet that morning, a heavy silence hanging over the land. The people of Earth had been waiting for days, the fear of the unknown growing stronger with each passing hour. News had spread like wildfire that an alien ship was approaching, and when the message arrived, everyone braced themselves for what was to come. They had heard stories of a fearsome alien race, a species that ruled over planets with fear and violence. These beings were known for their power and strength, and they made entire civilizations tremble. No one had dared to defy them, and now one of them had come to Earth. The ship landed in the center of the colony, its massive size casting a shadow that seemed to swallow the ground below. The air crackled with tension as the doors opened, and from within, a figure emerged. She was tall, her presence almost overwhelming. The alien woman stood in the doorway, her dark eyes scanning the humans before her. Her skin shimmered with a faint, otherworldly glow, and her long, silver hair fell in waves around her shoulders. She moved with grace, her every step calculated and precise, like a predator surveying her territory. The people of the colony stood frozen, their faces pale with fear. They had all heard the stories of her race, of the destruction they had left behind as they conquered world after world. Some trembled, others looked for somewhere to hide, but all of them were afraid. But there was one person who didn't flinch. A young man, standing at the edge of the crowd, looked up at the alien woman with calm eyes. His name was Ethan. He wasn't like the others. While the rest of the people around him were paralyzed with terror, he didn't move, didn't show any sign of fear. Instead, he stood there, staring at her with quiet curiosity. The alien woman's eyes locked on him, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. She took a slow step forward, her gaze never leaving his. She was used to fear. She was used to seeing others cower at the sight of her, to feeling the power she held over them. But this human was different. He didn't shrink back. He didn't run. He simply stood there, unafraid. The alien woman tilted her head slightly, intrigued by his lack of fear. "Everyone fears me," she said, her voice smooth and cold, carrying a hint of confusion. "So why don't you, human?" Ethan didn't answer right away. He took a moment to study her, his expression thoughtful. He had heard the stories, of course, but he didn't believe in the same kind of fear that others did. He had seen hers, and there was a quiet strength in his stance. "You humans are strange," she said softly, more to herself than to him. She had expected a reaction, an attempt to flee, or at least some sign of fear. But this human was different. Ethan took a step forward, closing the distance between them just slightly. "Fear doesn't make someone strong," he said, his voice quieter now. "It just makes them do things they'll regret. I've seen it tear people apart. I've seen it make people who were once good do terrible things." The alien woman studied him for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. "So, you believe yourself stronger than me?" she asked, her tone now laced with amusement, as though the idea of a human being stronger than her was laughable. Ethan didn't hesitate. "I believe strength is about more than power," he said. "It's about standing up when others are too afraid. It's about choosing to face what's hard even when it seems impossible." The alien woman remained silent, her gaze still fixed on him. For a moment, she wondered if the stories about humans were wrong. Perhaps there was more to them than she had been led to believe. Perhaps this human who stood before her without fear was telling the truth, but she didn't know what to make of it. Fear was all she had known for so long. It was what had kept her people in control, what had made them feared across the galaxy. And now, here was this human, so sure of himself, so calm, and it unsettled her. "Tell me, human," she said, her voice still soft, but with a strange intensity. "What makes you think you can stand before me and speak so boldly?" Ethan smiled slightly, his eyes still steady. "Because I don't believe anyone should be feared," he said. "I believe fear should be something we face together, not something that controls us." The alien woman stared at him for a long moment, and for the first time in a long time. She wasn't sure of herself. She had come to conquer, to instill fear. But this human had shown her something else, something that she hadn't expected. To find out, her mind raced with questions. What was it about him that made him so different? Why wasn't he afraid? And what did it mean for her people, to meet someone like him? And as the alien woman stood there, staring at the human who had no fear of her, she realized that perhaps there was more to humanity than anyone had ever told her. Perhaps fear wasn't the only thing that made someone strong. The days that followed the encounter were strange for both Ethan and the alien woman. The people of the colony remained on edge, their eyes constantly darting to the alien ship, which still stood as a reminder of the power they had witnessed. The alien woman, whose name was Suri, had come with expectations, ready to make her presence known, to assert control. But something had changed after her conversation with Ethan, something she hadn't expected. Suri spent the next few days observing the humans from a distance. They went about their daily routines, unaffected by her presence. She had thought that they would fear her, but instead, they treated her like they treated everyone else, no more. No less, this lack of fear confused her. She had been raised to believe that power and fear were inseparable. Her race ruled through fear. It was what they knew best. But this human, this Ethan, was different. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the colony, Ethan found himself walking alone near the outskirts of the settlement. He had been thinking a lot about Suri. Lately, his mind kept coming back to the strange alien woman and her words. "Why don't you fear me?" she had asked. He hadn't been sure how to answer her then, but now he knew what he needed to say. Ethan walked quietly, the night air cool against his skin. He stopped at a small clearing, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. It was here, standing alone, that he felt most at peace. His thoughts were interrupted when he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned, expecting to see one of the colony's leaders, but instead it was Suri. She stood just at the edge of the clearing, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Ceres didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if contemplating his words. "I've never known a human to speak to me so freely," she said, her voice quiet but sharp, like the sound of a blade slicing through the air. "Most of your kind tremble when they see me." Ethan smiled slightly, his eyes softening. "Not everyone. Some of us understand that power isn't everything." Ceres's eyes flickered. She didn't speak immediately, her thoughts swirling. She had always believed that power was the ultimate form of control. It was how she had been raised. It was what her people believed in. Yet here was a human small, fragile in comparison. To her who didn't see power the way she did. "Do you think you are stronger than me, Ethan?" Suri finally asked, her voice low. It was a question that carried weight, a challenge that seemed to hang in the air. Ethan took a moment to consider his answer. He had never thought of himself as someone strong in the traditional sense. He wasn't a soldier, wasn't a warrior, but there was something inside him, something that had always kept him grounded, no matter the challenges he faced. "I don't think I'm stronger than you," he said, his voice steady. "But I think strength is more than just how much power you have. Strength is about standing firm when everything else falls apart. It's about the courage to be vulnerable, to face things that scare you, even when you don't have all the answers." Suri listened intently. These were not the words she had expected from a human. She had expected him to cower, to fear her. But instead, she heard something else, a belief in something beyond mere power. Something she didn't fully understand but couldn't ignore. "Vulnerable?" Suri asked, the word unfamiliar on her tongue. "What is it like to be vulnerable? To have that weakness?" Ethan took a slow step toward her, the space between them still wide. He could see the flicker of confusion in her eyes, the way she struggled to grasp the concept. "It's not weakness," he said, shaking his head gently. "It's knowing that you don't have all the answers, but still choosing to move forward. It's about trusting others, even when it's hard. It's about being willing to put yourself at risk, to allow yourself to care." Suri stood silently for a long time, her thoughts tumbling over each other. This was new to her. In her world, trust was earned through power, and love was a concept most of her kind didn't understand. To them, emotions were a weakness, something to be avoided. But here was Ethan, speaking as if vulnerability was a strength, as if caring for others was something worth fighting for. She looked up at him, her gaze steady. "And do you believe humans are stronger because of this?" she asked. Ethan thought about it for a moment. "I think strength comes from understanding each other, from caring for those around you. It's easy to destroy things. It's much harder to build them, to create something lasting out of trust and love." Cerise stared at him, her mind racing. She had come to this planet with one purpose, to strike fear into the hearts of those who lived here. But now, standing before this human, she found herself questioning everything she had believed. Fear had always been her tool, the key to her power. But now, she wondered if there was another way, a way that didn't rely on fear, but on something deeper. Perhaps I've been wrong," Suri whispered, more to herself than to Ethan. "Maybe I have been using the wrong kind of strength all along." Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he simply nodded, giving her the space she needed. For the first time, he saw her not as a conqueror, but as someone who was searching for something more, something beyond the fear and power that had defined her existence for so long. And as the two of them stood there in the quiet of the evening, Ethan realized that perhaps he had made a difference, not by standing up to her, but by showing her that strength wasn't always about power. It was about something far more important, connection. The next day, Suri found herself in a place she never thought she would be, doubting her own beliefs. The conversation with Ethan had left a mark on her, one that refused to fade. For the first time, she wasn't sure of herself. She had come to Earth with one goal: to make humans fear her, to remind them of the power her people held over others. But now, standing here, watching them go about their daily lives as if she wasn't a threat, something had changed. She sat by the edge of the colony, watching as humans went on with their work, laughing, talking, and even playing. The children ran through the streets without any care in the world, and the adults worked together, sharing meals and stories. There was no fear, no trembling at the sight of her. It was as though they saw her as just another person, another being, not a force to be reckoned with. Suri didn't understand it. In her world, fear was what kept the galaxy in line. Her people had ruled through terror. It was fear that made civilizations bow before them. But here, on Earth, it was as though fear had no place. It didn't exist in the same way. And she found herself questioning whether the power she had relied on all her life was truly the only way. As she sat lost in thought, Ethan approached. He didn't seem surprised to see her there, but he did seem curious. He walked over, his steps slow but steady, until he stood beside her. The quiet between them was comfortable, not filled with tension like it had been before. "You've been thinking a lot," Ethan said, his voice gentle. Suri glanced at him, meeting his eyes. She didn't speak at first, unsure of how to voice the questions that had been swirling in her mind. After a moment, she finally spoke. "I don't understand you, human," she admitted, her voice softer than usual. "I came here to make you fear me, and yet you don't." Ethan smiled slightly. "Fear isn't everything," he said, his voice calm. "It's not what makes us strong. It's the things we stand for, the things we protect, that give us strength." Suri tilted her head, still not fully grasping his words. "But strength, power, is what makes a ruler," she said. Slowly, "It's what makes others obey you. Fear is the greatest tool in the galaxy. Maybe it's the greatest tool for control," Ethan said, looking out over the colony. "But control isn't the same as strength. You can control people with fear, sure, but it doesn't last. It only makes them weaker. True strength comes from within, from standing up when things are hard, from making the right choices even when you're afraid." Suri was silent for a long time, her eyes scanning the horizon as she processed his words. She had always believed in strength through power. Her people had taught her that fear was the foundation of everything. But now, she found herself questioning. Was Ethan right? Could there be a different kind of strength? Could it be possible to lead without using fear? "I don't know," Suri murmured after a long pause. "I've never thought about it that way. I've always believed in fear and power, It's what my people have taught me. Ethan sat down beside her, his expression soft. You don't have to follow what others have told you, he said. You can choose your own path. Everyone can. Strength isn't about what others expect from you, it's about what you choose to become. Suri looked at him, her expression thoughtful. She had never had anyone speak to her like this before. In her world, strength and power were everything, but here, among these humans, she felt something different, something she couldn't explain. There was kindness, understanding, and a sense of unity that seemed so foreign to her. For the first time in a long time, Suri felt the weight of her power as something that wasn't entirely her own. It had always been her shield, her weapon, but now it felt heavy, burdensome. She had spent so long using it to control others, but she had never stopped to think about what that control had cost her. I've never had someone talk to me like this before, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. I've never had anyone challenge me like this. Ethan turned his head to look at her, his expression warm. I'm not challenging you, Suri. I'm just asking you to see something different, something that might be harder, but more rewarding. The alien woman was quiet again, her mind racing. Could she really change? Could she let go of the power that had defined her entire existence and find a new way? She didn't know, but for the first time, she felt like it might be worth trying. She wasn't sure where this path would lead, but she knew she couldn't stay where she was. Not after what she had learned from Ethan. Maybe you're right, Suri said, her voice uncertain but curious. Maybe there's more to strength than I've been taught. Ethan nodded. I think you'll find it, Suri. You don't have to do it alone. Either. There are people here who can help you find your way, people who will accept you for who you are, not just for what you can do. Suri looked out at the colony again, the soft sounds of life around her filling the silence. For the first time, she felt something different, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She didn't know if she could change everything she had known, but maybe, just maybe, she could try. And that was a start. As the evening sky turned dark, the stars above twinkled brightly. It was as though the universe was watching, waiting to see what would happen next for Suri. This was the beginning of something new, something Unceris had always been alone in her power. She had never known what it felt like to be truly seen, not for her strength or her abilities, but for who she was as a person. But with Ethan, something was different. He didn't fear her, and in turn, he didn't try to use her. He treated her with respect, not because of what she could do, but because he recognized something deeper in her. One evening, after the sun had set and the colony was quiet, Ethan invited Suri to walk through the settlement with him. They walked side by side, no longer strangers to each other, but companions on a journey neither of them had expected. The streets were peaceful, lit only by the soft glow of lanterns hanging along the buildings. Suri was used to being an outsider, always looking in, never truly part of the world she found herself in. But tonight, as she walked beside Ethan, she felt as though she was part of something. The people of the colony passed them by, nodding politely or offering brief smiles. There was no fear in their eyes, only curiosity. It made Suri feel something unfamiliar, a sense of belonging. They reached a small open space at the edge of the colony, where a fountain sparkled under the light of the stars. Ethan stopped, looking at the water for a moment before turning to Suri. Do you ever wonder what it's like to belong somewhere? He asked, his voice thoughtful. Suri looked at him, unsure of how to answer. I've always belonged to my people, but it was a different kind of belonging. It was built on fear, on control. I never knew what it was like to belong to something that didn't need fear to hold it together. Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. It's not easy to let go of what you've known your whole life, he said gently. But I think belonging to something good, something built on trust and kindness is worth it. Maybe it's not as powerful as fear, but it's stronger in the end. Suri stood in silence, looking out at the fountain. She had been raised to believe that power was the only thing that mattered, that fear was the only way to keep control. But now, standing here with Ethan, she was starting to see that there was more to life than what she had been taught. I've spent so much of my life trying to control everything, Suri said quietly, her voice filled with a hint of regret. But all I've done is push people away. I've never known what it's like to be close to anyone, to truly connect. Ethan turned to her, his expression soft. It's never too late to change, he said. It's never too late to find a new path. Suri looked at him, seeing the kindness in his eyes. She had always thought that she had to stand alone, that power and fear were the only things that could define her. But now, she wasn't so sure. Ethan had shown her a different way, a way that was harder, yes, but also more fulfilling. She didn't need to be alone. She didn't need to live in fear. For the first time in a long while, Suri felt something stir within her. It was hope. She didn't know where it would lead, or if she could change all the damage she had done in the past. But for the first time, she wanted to try. She wanted to learn what it meant to truly connect with others, to be a part of something that didn't rely on fear to keep it together. Thank you, Ethan, she said softly, her voice full of gratitude, for showing me something I didn't know I needed to see. Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. You don't have to thank me. I think you've always had it in you. You just needed to see it for yourself. Suri stood there for a moment, lost in her thoughts. She had been so sure of herself for so long, so sure that fear was the only way to live. But now, standing beside Ethan, she was beginning to realize that there was another way, a way that didn't involve control or domination, a way that involved trust, connection, and understanding. I don't know what's ahead, Suri said, her voice uncertain. But I know I want to try. I want to learn what it means to be part of something, without fear. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, his smile kind. You're not alone anymore, Suri. We'll figure it out together. As they stood together, the soft sound of the fountain filling the silence, Suri realized that for the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. She had found someone who believed in her, who saw her not as a weapon, but as a person. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something new. In that quiet moment, under the stars, Suri knew that she was ready to change. She didn't know how long it would take or what the future would hold, but she was no longer afraid to face it. For the first time, she believed that strength didn't come from fear or power, it came from connection. And that was something worth fighting for. Days turned into weeks, and Suri found herself immersed in the life of the human colony. She had never imagined that she would grow to care for this place, or the people in it. They were so different from her own kind. The humans did not rely on fear, nor did they find power in dominance. They built their lives on trust, cooperation, and understanding. And it was this that slowly began to change Suri. Ethan had become her constant companion, guiding her through the complex world of who Ethan. She began, her voice soft and hesitant. What if I can't change? What if my past is too much for me to leave behind? Ethan looked at her, his expression calm and understanding. He had known this question would come. He had seen the doubt in her eyes every time they spoke of the future. It wasn't easy for Suri to let go of her past. For so long, her power and fear had defined her, and now she was being asked to live a different way. It was a difficult path, one she wasn't sure she was ready to take. Change is never easy, Ethan said gently. But you're not alone, Suri. I'm here, and so are the people of this colony. No one expects you to be perfect or to change overnight. It's a process, and it will take time. Suri nodded slowly, her gaze fixed on the water as the soft breeze rippled its surface. She thought about the time she had spent on Earth, how the humans had shown her a life filled with warmth and compassion. She had spent so many years believing that power was the key to everything. But now she was starting to see that there was more to life than just control. I never understood what it meant to care for someone, Suri said, her voice barely above a whisper. I always thought that showing weakness was something to be ashamed of, that it made you vulnerable. But now I'm starting to realize that it's okay to care. It's okay to trust someone, even if it means being vulnerable. Ethan smiled at her words, feeling a warmth in his chest. He had seen Suri grow so much in the time they had spent together. She was no longer the cold, powerful alien she had been when she first arrived. She was becoming something new, something more human, something more compassionate. It's not weakness, Suri, Ethan said softly. Caring for others takes real strength. It takes courage to let someone in, to share your life with them. You don't have to be alone anymore. Suri looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined that she would find someone like Ethan, someone who would help her see the world in a new light. She had come to Earth to conquer, to instill fear, but now she found herself questioning everything she had ever known. I don't know if I can ever completely let go of my past, Suri said, her voice filled with uncertainty. But I want to try. I want to be better. I want to be someone who can be trusted, someone who can care without fear. You already are, Suri, Ethan said, his voice full of conviction. You've already come so far. You don't have to change everything at once. Just take it one step at a time. And when you fall, we'll be here to help you get back up. The words were simple, but they meant more to Suri than anything else. She had always thought that she had to be strong and unyielding, that emotions were a weakness that could be exploited. But now, as she sat by the lake with Ethan, she realized that true strength came from being open, from allowing herself to feel, to connect as they sat in silence. The stars above them shining brightly, Suri felt a sense of peace that she had never experienced before. The fear that had once consumed her, that had driven her to conquer and destroy, was slowly fading. In its place, something new was growing, something that was softer, kinder, and more genuine. She still didn't know what the future held, or if she could ever fully leave behind the weight of her past. But for the first time, she was willing to try. She was willing to learn and grow, to be a part of something greater than herself. You're right, Ethan, Suri said quietly, her eyes still fixed on the stars. I'm not alone anymore. I have people who care about me, and maybe, for the first time, I can care about others, too. Ethan smiled, proud of the progress Suri had made. She had come so far, from a powerful alien conqueror to someone who was learning the value of trust and connection. It wasn't going to be easy, but he knew that Suri had the strength within her to change, and he would be by her side, helping her every step of the way. As the night grew colder, the two of them sat together in silence, their shared understanding of each other deepening. In that moment, Suri realized that the greatest strength wasn't in power or fear, it was in the ability to love and be loved, and for the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The next few weeks were filled with change. Suri had slowly started to settle into her new life, but it wasn't easy every day. She was faced with new challenges, new lessons to learn. There were moments of doubt, times when she wasn't sure if she could keep going down this path. But there was something inside her, something new, that kept her moving forward. Ethan was there every step of the way, helping her navigate the complexities of human emotions and relationships. He had become more than just a companion to her. He had become her guide, her friend, the person who believed in her when she could barely believe in herself. And as much as she hated to admit it, Suri realized she had started to care for him in a way she hadn't expected. One evening, as the stars filled the sky and the air turned cool, Suri found herself standing outside the main building of the colony, staring at the sky. It was a peaceful night, the kind of night that reminded her of the calm she had been searching for all her life. The wind blew gently, carrying the sense of the earth with it. It felt so different from the harsh winds of her home planet. Suri thought about her past, about the many worlds she had conquered, the fear she had spread. It had all seemed so important back then. But now, standing here in this peaceful place, it all felt meaningless. She had spent her whole life building walls around herself, hiding behind power and fear. But now, those walls were beginning to crumble. The question she had once feared was now at the forefront of her mind. Who am I, really? Ethan, Suri said quietly, almost to herself. Ethan had been nearby, working on something with the other humans. When he heard his name, he immediately came over to her, sensing the change in her tone. He stopped beside her, his gaze following hers to the sky. What's on your mind? he asked gently, his voice calm and reassuring. Suri hesitated, unsure of how to express the thoughts that had been swirling in her mind for days. I've been thinking, she said slowly, her voice filled with uncertainty, about everything I've done. The things I've taken, the people I've hurt. I don't know if I can ever make up for that. I don't know if I can change everything I've done in the past. Ethan was silent for a moment, his eyes thoughtful. He understood how hard it could be to confront the past, to look at the things you regret. But he also knew that Suri wasn't the same person she had been when she first arrived. She had changed already, more than she realized. You don't have to change everything all at once, Ethan said finally, his voice gentle. The past is something we can't change, but what matters is what you do now. The choices you make going forward. It's not about erasing what's happened, it's about becoming the person you want to be, step by step. Suri looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But what if I'm not strong enough? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I can't become that person? Ethan smiled softly, his eyes warm with understanding. You're already stronger than you think, he said. You've already taken the hardest step by realizing that you want to change. That's more strength than most people have, and you don't have to do it alone. You have me, and you have the people here. We're all here for you, Suri. Suri felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. It was strange. This feeling of being supported, of not having to face everything alone. It was something she had never experienced before, and for the first time, she realized that she didn't have to carry the weight of her past by herself. She didn't have to face it alone. I've been so afraid of letting people in, Suri said softly. Why? Her voice filled with vulnerability, afraid of what they might see, of what they might think of me. Ethan looked at her, his expression sincere. You don't have to be afraid, Suri. People will see the real you, the person you're becoming. And that person is already amazing. I see it every day. Suri felt a lump form in her throat as she looked at him. His words touched her more deeply than she had expected. She had spent so many years hiding, afraid to show who she really was. But now, with Ethan's help, she was learning that it was okay to let people see her. It was okay to be vulnerable. I've never had anyone believe in me like you do, Suri said, her voice thick with emotion. I've never had anyone give me a chance to be something different. Ethan reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. I'm glad I could be that person for you, he said quietly. But you should know you're the one who's making the change. You're the one who's finding your way. I'm just here to walk beside you. Suri looked down at his hand on her shoulder, and for the first time in her life, she felt something she had never felt before. Hope. She had always believed that power came from fear, from control. But now, she was learning that true power came from within, power that didn't require anyone to be afraid. It came from choosing to do better, to be better, even when it was hard. For the first time, Suri believed that she could truly change. She wasn't perfect, and she wasn't sure what the future held, but she was willing to try, to take it one step at a time. And with Ethan by her side, she knew she wasn't alone in this journey. As they stood there in the quiet of the evening, Suri realized that the past no longer defined her. She was no longer the conqueror, the one who relied on fear. She was someone new, someone who was learning to trust, to care, and to live without the weight of the past holding her back. And for the first time, she felt free. As the days turned into weeks, Suri began to embrace her new life more fully. The fear that had once consumed her heart was slowly being replaced by something stronger, something that, for the first time, felt right. She had spent her whole life using fear as her shield. But now, in the warmth of the human colony, she was learning that there were other ways to protect herself and those she cared about. The humans had welcomed her with open arms, and as much as she struggled with it at first, Suri realized that she had found a place where she could truly belong. The people of the colony didn't see her as a powerful conqueror. They saw her as a person. They saw her for who she was becoming, not who she had been. Ethan remained her constant guide. He had shown her the strength in vulnerability, in connection, and in understanding. He had helped her find the courage to let go of her past, to face her fears, and to trust in something greater than power. In many ways, Suri felt as though she owed him everything, but more than that, she knew that she had come to care for him deeply. He had become someone important to her, someone she couldn't imagine her life without. One evening, as they sat outside beneath the stars, Suri turned to Ethan with a question that had been on her mind for a while. "Ethan," she began, her voice hesitant, "I've been thinking about everything, about the past, the present, and what's ahead. What if I'm not ready? What if I can't be the person you believe I can be?" Ethan looked at her, his gaze soft but filled with understanding. "I don't believe in a perfect person," he said gently. "Everyone has their struggles, their doubts. The most important thing is that you're trying. You're already a different person from the one who first arrived here. I've seen it in the way you talk, the way you act, the way you care. You're ready, Suri. You've always been ready." Suri felt a lump form in her throat at his words. For so long, she had believed that her past would forever define her, that the fear she had caused would never go away. But now, standing here with Ethan, she felt as though she had finally found the strength to move forward. "I don't know what the future holds," Suri said quietly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "But I want to try. I want to learn what it means to truly live. I want to be the kind of person who doesn't rely on fear to get by." Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. "You don't have to figure it all out right away," he said softly. "Take it one step at a time. Every day is a new chance to be better, to grow. And I'll be here, every step of the way, to support you." Suri looked up at him, the weight of his words settling deep in her heart. She realized that she had been so afraid of change, so afraid of being vulnerable, that she had never allowed herself to truly grow. But now, with Ethan by her side, she felt ready to face whatever came next. She wasn't perfect, and she knew she would make mistakes along the way, but that didn't matter anymore. She had learned that it was okay to fail, as long as she kept trying. As the days passed, Suri continued to grow, to learn, and to heal. She spent more time with the people of the colony, helping them in any way she could. She found joy in small moments, working together with others, sharing stories, laughing, and even just sitting in silence, comfortable in the presence of those who accepted her. One day, the colony received a visitor. It was a group from another human settlement, arriving in a small ship. The group was wary at first, unsure of Suri and what she represented. They had heard of her race, of the fear that Suri had once instilled across the galaxy. But when they saw her standing among the humans, talking with them, laughing with them, they began to understand. Suri could feel their eyes on her as they approached, and for a moment, she felt that old fear creeping back. But then, she looked over at Ethan, standing beside her, his eyes filled with encouragement. She took a deep breath and walked forward to meet the group, her head held high. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel the need to intimidate or control. She simply wanted to show them who she was now. "I know what you've heard," Suri said, her voice steady but kind. "But I am not the person I once was. I've changed, and I want to prove that to you. I want to show you that strength doesn't come from fear. It comes from understanding, from compassion, and from trust." The group stood silent for a moment, unsure of what to make of her words. But then, one of the women stepped forward, her eyes soft with curiosity. "We can see that you're different," she said quietly. Maybe there's hope for change." "After all," Suri smiled, a small but genuine smile. It was the first time someone had truly acknowledged her efforts to change, and it filled her with a warmth she hadn't known was possible. As the day wore on, the people of the colony and the visitors sat together, shared food, and exchanged stories. There was no fear, no mistrust, just people connecting with each other, learning from each other. That night, as Suri lay in bed, she thought about everything she had been through, the fear, the doubt, the uncertainty. But she also thought about how far she had come. She had let go of her past, and in doing so, she had found something she never expected: peace. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, She was ready to face it with an open heart, and as she drifted off to sleep, she realized that she was no longer defined by her past. She was defined by the choices she made now, the choices that would shape her future.